This week, the international media landscape was shaken by a dramatic announcement. US President Donald Trump, fresh off his re-election victory, has threatened to launch a billion-dollar lawsuit against the BBC. The move sent shockwaves through newsrooms around the world, raising urgent questions about press freedom, political power, and the future of global journalism. At the heart of the controversy is a BBC documentary that aired in the tense weeks leading up to the 2024 US election. Trump alleges that the program deliberately distorted his January 6, 2021 speech, painting him in a false and damaging light. The BBC, meanwhile, stands by its reporting, insisting it followed strict editorial guidelines. Trump's legal team has issued a formal demand for a retraction, a public apology, and a staggering sum in damages. With a Friday deadline fast approaching, the legal and political stakes are escalating by the hour, and both sides are preparing for a high-profile showdown. The White House is framing this as a battle for journalistic integrity, arguing that media organizations must be held accountable for accuracy. Trump's supporters, energized by the lawsuit, see it as a bold stand against what they call fake news and media bias. For the BBC, the lawsuit represents an unprecedented crisis, one that threatens not only its financial stability, but also its hard-earned reputation as a trusted global news source. Staff inside Broadcasting House are reportedly anxious as the world's media spotlight turns on them. As a publicly funded broadcaster, the BBC's mandate for impartiality and accuracy is under more scrutiny than ever before. Critics and supporters alike are watching closely to see if the BBC can uphold its standards in the face of such intense pressure. Around the globe, journalists, politicians, and ordinary viewers are watching to see how the BBC will respond. The outcome of this legal battle could set a precedent, potentially reshaping the relationship between politicians and the press for years to come. The stakes, financial, reputational, and diplomatic, could not be higher, as the world waits to see who will blink first in this extraordinary confrontation. In the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed Parliament, reaffirming support for an independent BBC, but stressing the need for accountability. He urged the broadcaster to uphold the highest journalistic standards and get their house in order, signalling the seriousness of the error. Starmer refused to intervene directly or call on Trump to drop the lawsuit, keeping the issue a domestic matter and avoiding a diplomatic clash. His response was measured, emphasizing institutional reform over political confrontation. The White House notes Starmer and Trump maintain a working relationship, suggesting no major diplomatic fallout, yet. Starmer's approach highlights the delicate balance between government, media, and international allies. All eyes remain on the BBC's next move. At the centre of this controversy is a decision that shook the foundations of journalistic trust: the BBC's editing of Donald Trump's January 6th speech. What seemed like a routine editorial choice quickly spiraled into a major scandal, raising questions about media responsibility and integrity. The documentary spliced together key lines. "We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight like hell," while omitting Trump's explicit call to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. This selective editing changed the meaning of the speech in a profound way. By removing this crucial context, the edit made Trump's words appear as a direct incitement to violence, rather than a rallying cry for political support. The nuance of his message was lost, and the public was left with a distorted version of events. The phrase, "fight like hell," which in political circles is often used as a metaphor for passionate advocacy, was suddenly recast as a literal call to action. This shift in interpretation had significant consequences for how the speech was received. In response to mounting criticism, the BBC has admitted this was a serious editorial error, acknowledging the impact it had on public understanding and trust. The edit only served to inflame an already polarized debate about January 6th and Trump's intent, fueling further division and suspicion among viewers. By altering the sequence of Trump's words, the BBC appeared to abandon its commitment to impartiality, and instead seemed to take sides in a deeply contentious political conflict. This breach of impartiality is at the very core of Trump's complaint, and it has become a rallying point for his supporters who argue that the media cannot be trusted. Ultimately, the controversy highlights the immense power and the serious risk of editorial choices in shaping public perception, reminding us that even a few words can change everything. The fallout was immediate. BBC Director General Tim Davie and News CEO Deborah Turness resigned, acknowledging the gravity of the error. Chairman Samir Shah issued a public apology, admitting the edit gave a misleading impression of Trump's intent. The apology, broadcast widely, aimed to de-escalate the crisis and restore trust. The BBC is reviewing Trump's legal demands, leaving room for negotiation before the deadline. Leadership changes signal accountability, but also leave the BBC in a vulnerable position. The focus now shifts to new leadership and how they'll steer the BBC through this storm. The world is watching to see if the BBC can rebuild its reputation. The British public, who fund the BBC through their licence fees, are deeply invested in the scandal. For many, the BBC is not just a broadcaster, but a national institution that represents British values and identity. This controversy has struck a nerve, raising questions about trust, accountability, and the role of public service media in a changing world. A recent YouGov poll found that 57% of Britons believe the BBC should apologise directly to Trump, prioritising fairness over politics. Only 25% disagreed, highlighting a clear majority who expect the broadcaster to uphold its reputation for impartiality, even in the face of international controversy. The incident has fueled criticism from those who accuse the BBC of bias, especially as its royal charter and funding model face review. Demonstrations and heated debates have erupted, with some calling for greater transparency and reform. The scandal arrives at a sensitive time, with debates over the BBC's future intensifying. Lawmakers and media experts are weighing in, questioning whether the broadcaster can adapt to new expectations. Public opinion now exerts real pressure on the broadcaster to act transparently and restore trust. Many Britons are watching closely, eager to see how the BBC will respond to the mounting scrutiny. Critics are using the incident to push for radical reform, including changes to the licence fee. Some argue that the time has come to rethink how the BBC is funded and held accountable. The BBC's response will shape its future as a public institution. Its leadership faces tough decisions that could redefine its relationship with the British people. In the end, the court of public opinion may prove decisive, determining not just the outcome of this scandal, but the very direction of the BBC itself. Trump's lawsuit threat fits a pattern. He's long used legal action to challenge media organizations he accuses of bias. His strategy aims to win damages, force retractions, and intimidate critical coverage, emboldened by past settlements with major networks. Even when lawsuits are hard to win, the process itself can chill investigative journalism and encourage self-censorship. The BBC is now the latest high-profile target in Trump's ongoing campaign against what he calls a biased media elite. For Trump, the legal battlefield is a political tool, rallying his base and putting global media on notice. The BBC faces not just a lawsuit, but a test of its editorial independence. The outcome will resonate far beyond this single case. Ironically, the BBC's own internal watchdogs first flagged the problematic edit, not Trump's team. Senior advisors Michael Prescott and David Grossman raised concerns soon after the documentary aired, but leadership failed to act. Months of inaction allowed the error to fester until a leak to the press in November forced the issue into the open. Public outrage followed, with hundreds of complaints flooding in. The delay in addressing the mistake created the impression of a cover-up and damaged the BBC's credibility. The episode highlights the need for swift, transparent correction, not just internal checks. The lesson standards mean little without the courage to enforce them. The scandal hits as the BBC faces existential questions about its funding and mandate, with its royal charter up for renewal in 2027. Critics are seizing on the incident to argue for radical reform, including scrapping the licence fee. Leadership turmoil adds to the uncertainty, as new leaders must restore trust and navigate treacherous political waters. The BBC's future now hinges on convincing both government and public of its value and impartiality. The Royal Charter is more than a legal document. It's a social contract built on trust. This crisis has cracked that contract. How the BBC responds will determine its fate. The stakes? Survival in its current form, or radical, irreversible change. This episode is a stark reminder. Journalism's foundation is trust. When mistakes are made, transparency and swift correction are essential to rebuild credibility. The BBC's delay in addressing its error turned a misstep into a crisis, threatening its leadership and future. In today's polarized world, the temptation to shape narratives is strong, but the cost of shortcuts is too high. Journalists must present information fairly and in context, resisting pressure to sensationalize. The path forward for the BBC and all media demands honesty, humility, and a renewed commitment to the facts. Only by upholding these principles can the press regain public trust. In a world awash with misinformation, responsible truth-telling is journalism's most vital service.